Hi there, Year 10. Welcome back after Easter. This is when you're tuning in with this topic on deforestation, or if you're picking it up another time, welcome back too. So this is the last topic on your human impacts booklet. And what we're going to do today is we're just going to run through some of the core content and I'll explain how that's going to link with your booklet later on. So the main learning aim is just simply to describe the effects of deforestation and look a little bit more around that. Just some facts for you. So every 1 minute, a forest the size of 20 football fields is cut down. Worldwide, more than 1.6 billion people rely on forest products for all parts of their livelihoods. Then this picture here is saying, but what about the animal's home? I'm going to come on to that in one of the questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through 6 key questions that will also directly relate to the questions you'll see in your booklet. But don't do your booklet right now, just listen to this and you can use it later on. I'm going to talk around a few pictures, so you're going to have 6 questions with 6 different pictures, linking with them, and I'll talk to you a little bit about each. So why does deforestation occur? So from these pictures you can see, and I know a lot of you will be aware already of what deforestation is, and this is something you'll discuss in your live lesson this week. Why does it occur? To clear land for farming or building. Wood can be used as a fuel. It can also be used as a building material. However, what are the impacts of this? Straight on to our learning aim. So how does deforestation decrease biodiversity? Now, the first thing here that's important to do is, what does the word biodiversity mean? And I'm sure lots of you will have ideas of this from previous topics, but biodiversity is the number of species you find within an ecosystem. So we're looking at an ecosystem here, particularly, for example, the rainforest, and how many different species you'd find and how they're impacted by deforestation. Now, quite evidently, trees are habitats. There's nesting sites and food sources for many species. These species will either die or migrate if there's no trees, and disrupt the food web that they're part of. So it will disrupt their habitat, their food sources, and if they leave or if they die, it'll also disrupt the food web that they're linked in with. The loss of forests reduces, therefore, biodiversity, and we run the risk of losing organisms that also might be useful for us in the future, because it's not just animal species that we might be losing, but we might be losing plant species that might be good sources for new medicines. And there's also the argument that we have a moral responsibility to look after the planet and all the resources that it provides. Question number 3. So remember, this does link in with your booklets when you come to do these later on. How does deforestation affect soil? And this clue, the picture here, you can see the roots which are holding the soil in place there. So roots of plants hold soil together and slows water runoff when it rains. Without trees, therefore, there are no roots, and the soil is less compact, and soil erosion will start to increase in certain areas. This can lead to barren land, it can lead to flooding, it can lead to landslides, because we haven't got these roots holding the soil and keeping it compact in place. The next question, how does deforestation affect the water cycle? Now, the key thing before we talk about its impact is to look at this word evapotranspiration. And it's a really important word for us to recognise because it is actually stated directly on your specification for the GCSE. So evapotranspiration is made up of transpiration and evaporation, as it suggests in the name. Transpiration is the water loss through the stomata, through the leaves of the trees. Evaporation is the loss of water from the soil and from the land. So the combination of these two things together, transpiration from the leaves and evaporation from the soil, we give it the term evapotranspiration. So looking at the water cycle, so the removal of trees will obviously decrease evapotranspiration, so the transpiration part of that, and there will be less water returning to the atmosphere. So if you can see on the second diagram, if there's less water returning to the atmosphere, there will be less clouds, there'll be less precipitation occurring. There will also be an increased runoff due to less compact soil that we just spoke about. So there might be an increased surface runoff into the oceans, into the rivers. The next question, How does deforestation disturb the balance of the atmospheric CO2? So atmospheric CO2 is what we find in the atmosphere, and that is in the middle of this diagram with the CO2 symbol. So this is looking at the carbon cycle, really, and it'll be a lot of knowledge that you'll have picked up from lots of different areas of the course. But deforestation results in less carbon dioxide being removed from the atmosphere via photosynthesis. That's what you've done potentially in the last topic that you just started to cover. If not, you'll do that soon. So photosynthesis by the leaves takes in CO2. So if we get rid of the trees, we won't be taking in as much CO2. There will also be carbon dioxide emissions when you actually use machinery to cut down the trees. So the burning of fuels, you can see here from the house, the burning of fuels will increase the CO2, and that might be from the machinery that's used to do the deforestation to clear the forests. And sometimes when you've cleared the forest, those trees, as we spoke about in our first question, are actually burnt to help clear the land, and that will also release CO2 into the atmosphere. So overall, all of these things are going to increase the net gain of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So less will be taken into the trees and more will be released into the atmosphere overall. So we talk about it as a net gain. Final question. How does deforestation disturb the balance in atmospheric oxygen? So not CO2 this time, but we're looking at atmospheric oxygen. Now we spoke about photosynthesis. Plants take CO2 in when doing photosynthesis, and they actually release oxygen as a product. So deforestation results in less oxygen being added to the atmosphere by the process of photosynthesis. And we rely on oxygen, as I'm sure you're all aware, we rely on oxygen for aerobic respiration. So overall, there'll be less oxygen being added to the atmosphere via photosynthesis. And there's quite a big clue there in that picture. Okay, those are the 6 key questions. Now, some, depending on your teacher, they might ask you to have a go at this challenge task, and this is a challenge task to extend your knowledge a little further on this topic. This is a research article. It's very interesting. It's a very recent research article from 2018, looking at actually ways that we can solve the problem of deforestation and different methods of how we might regrow some of these areas of land that have been cleared. So if your teachers do ask you, this is a bit of further reading that you might want to do by clicking on that link. So that is the end of deforestation. Describe the effects of deforestation. Do now have a go, if your teacher asks you to, at completing your booklet on this. And you can use this video again and pause at different points if that helps. And then have a go at the applications that follow. There'll be some past paper questions in your booklet that will follow on from these 6 key questions. Now you have reached the end of your human impacts topic. So what I'd like you to do is to go back to the front of your booklet in OneNote, and you should see this specification check going from 4.12 right down to today's lesson 4.18. And just do a bit of a spec check, reflect yourself. By doing your work on OneNote, have you managed to cover all these key points? Or is there something you're still unsure of and you need to get in contact with your teacher about? Good luck!